Chiang Mai, September 29th, 2022. I have just arrived back in Thailand after completing my round-the-world trip in just 130 days. This video was supposed to be a recap of my year as a digital nomad in 2022. But for now, our story will end here. Let me explain. When the international travel ban finally lifted on November 1st, 2021, I knew it was time for me to start traveling again. But I wasn't ready. While the pandemic was hard at first, things had just started getting good in Australia, and I wasn't prepared to leave just yet. Despite the fun I was having on the Gold Coast, there was something within me that was calling me to move. Even having over a year to set up roots near family and new friends, I couldn't bring myself to commit to any long-term leases. Instead, 2022 brought about a new journey to finding somewhere else to base myself, somewhere else to call home. Invited by my new friend Josh, the move to Sydney was an attempt to bridge the gap between my desire for living abroad with the benefits of a settled life that I'd been experiencing for the last year and a half on the Gold Coast. What Sydney turned out to be was more of the same. I grew an appreciation for Sydney's beauty and sophistication, but with little to motivate or inspire me in the city, I reverted to drinking and partying as my primary activity to pass the time as I enjoyed the final months of Australian summer. After 3 months, I had given Sydney its chance, but it wasn't the only thing that Josh had invited me to. With the international border now open, several of my friends were keen to travel Europe for the summer, something we haven't been able to do for the last 2 seasons. With time to kill before summer in Europe started, I decided to head back somewhere familiar. Given the wealth of content I had already created on Chiang Mai, I didn't film much while I was there. It was a nervous time. My first time traveling internationally in this post-pandemic world. I spent my first night in quarantine, awaiting a negative COVID test. After 40 days in Thailand, I reached my first destination in Europe. With a week-long sail trip in Croatia booked with Josh and his friends in early July, I had the months of May and June left to fill. Luckily, my old friend Zara helped initiate my reintroduction to Europe, with an invitation to join her and a few friends in Lisbon and the Algarve. With Lisbon being somewhat of a digital nomad hotspot at present, it was also an opportunity to catch up with some old digital nomad friends who I hadn't seen before this pandemic. Then came a month in Turkey, a destination I chose based on digital nomad hype, as well as fascination with the unique Turkish culture, which seemed to enjoy similar music tastes to my own. For me, it was a taste of the digital nomad life that I had grown accustomed to in 2017, but had since moved on from. I connected with the digital nomad community in Istanbul, but I expressed feelings of being done with the lifestyle. At the same time, I was confused. If it wasn't the digital nomad life I was after, why was it so hard to commit to a settled life back home? After only my 3rd country on this trip, I was already tired of living out of a suitcase again. But did I miss my life in Australia? Not at all. The only alternative, therefore, was to look for a new home.
Yo, ready for this?
The issue with this realization was that I was already scheduled to meet up with friends in Croatia and soon after, Italy as well. Given that this was a great opportunity to experience Europe for the first time in 2 years, I decided to lean in before heading to my final destination. Josh in Croatia, Jess in Denver in Italy, Javier in Spain, and Lokman in Morocco. I had told everyone that I was done with the digital nomad life, yet here I was, spending the month of July across 5 different countries. Until, of course, my final country in Europe. London, England. With the opportunity of the youth mobility visa soon to expire, the idea of moving to the UK was something I needed to explore sooner rather than later. I caught up with old friends who themselves had made the move to London, and while we enjoyed some laughs together catching up and remembering old times, I wasn't convinced about England. While we hung out in the summer sun, my friend Max was reluctant to mention the harsh winters, of which I only had a small taste of last time I was there. During weekdays when I took the tube into town, I watched hundreds of Londoners go about their busy days, making the great British pound while I spent my humble Australian dollars. I wondered what my friends who seemed to enjoy living in this giant, expensive maze saw in it, and I realized that neither of them had experienced the places that made me initially fall in love with living abroad. Being in London, it made me appreciate the places that I had already turned my back on. I mean, London was a world away from Chiang Mai, a world away from Bali, and even a world away from the Gold Coast. And as if by divine timing, I got a text from an old friend. After half a decade, I caught up with fellow digital nomad and old friend Nick Nirov, and two new friends that traveled with Nick, Ryan and Kiefer. Together we enjoyed some of the best of Edinburgh Fringe Festival, but more importantly, we had a set of pivotal conversations that re-inspired me to take another look at the world outside of Europe. When I returned back to London, it became incredibly clear that this was not where I wanted to be. As I grew depressed into my final days in Europe, all I wanted was to just go home. It's ironic, isn't it? I was searching for home in the form of England, but the place that called me back, the place where I felt the most comfortable, was the first stop on my travels this year, and the first ever destination on my digital nomad path that I fell in love with. Now, I'd love to say that this is where my journey ends. It's true, in a lot of ways, I love the lifestyle in Thailand, but I can't commit just yet. Not with one more continent still to explore.